I would like to call this meeting of the City of Laredo Historic District Landmark Board. The meeting is today, June the 10th, 2021, and we're meeting at 1110 Houston Street, Laredo, Texas. And this meeting is now called to order. I would like to call the roll. Cristina Davila Villarreal.
Present.
Wayne Nance.
Here.
Stanley Green.
Here.
Priscilla Iglesias.
Here.
Justin Allen Huntsnurcher.
Here.
Robert David Gonzalez.
Here.
Maria Elena Morales. I believe she's absent due to work and asked to be excused. Mark Gonzalez.
Here.
Rebecca Sepulveda, present. We have a quorum. And now we would like to begin the meeting by pledging allegiance to the flag. Shall we stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We move on to consideration of approval for minutes of May 13th, 2021, and they are in our packets. If you please.
I'll move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a
Second.
second? Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Next item is citizen comments.
We don't have anybody currently signed up to comment. However, if anyone would like to step to the lectern, if
Will
they're
they
not
be
here,
allowed to comment when their actual item of interest?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So if anyone here would like to make a comment about an item we're discussing today, you can stand and participate. All right, there being no citizen comments, we move on to public hearing and consideration of a motion to consider site improvements at 901 Iturbide Street in the San Agustin de Laredo Historic District. And that is case number HDLB 08-2021. Do we need a motion to open the public hearing?
Yes.
I think so.
All right, may I hear a motion to?
I move to open the public hearing.
There's a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. So,
Madam Chairman, we have a short presentation on the item.
thank you.
Just a moment, we're I guess trying to get there. It's the action item. Here we go. There we go. The overview of the item is the applicant is Santo Sierra. Thunderbird Real Estate Limited is the owner. The property description is 901 Iturbide Street. It's located in the historic residential office zone. The request is the applicant is proposing to replace roofing materials from shingles to aluminum. Proposed exterior improvements require board approval. 11 letters were sent out. None were received either for or against. This is a location map. This is an aerial view. This is a street view. Also a street view. This is the roofing shingles to be replaced. The roof that you see sort of highlighted in yellow is the location proposed for the roofing replacement. This is pictures, of course, of damaged shingles. The proposed roofing materials and color. You see it's like a silvery white, the highlighted color. And an example of the proposed roofing materials. Staff's recommendation. Staff was unable to recommend approval of the proposed improvements as they are not compatible with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and illustrated guidelines for rehabilitation of historic buildings, or the city's historic preservation plan and the historic urban guidelines. The proposed improvements alter the appearance of the roof, which should be avoided, do not preserve the finish and appearance of the roof, and the replacement materials do not match the old materials in design, color, texture, and materials. And the proposed motion is either to approve or deny the request of application number HD 008-2021 for the proposed improvements located at 901 Pico Unit.
Open the floor for discussion.
I would like to invite the board to ask any questions.
I have a question. What was the original roof material? Because what we're looking at is a 20-year shingle, so, I mean, that couldn't have been put on within the last 30 years.
No, we did some research and we saw evidence that the shingles were there since 1985. We don't have any proof of what materials were there prior to. However, in this case, the preservation guidelines recommend preservation of existing materials. So that's why we're recommending the matching of the existing materials.
Well, as a builder, it doesn't, you know what I mean, this is obviously not the historic material that was originally on the house.
Well,
So to match a 20-year shingle, to put it back is actually, it's bad for the house.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, we're talking about historic preservation. We want to preserve the home. We want a lifetime roof.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean, there's metal roof all over the historic district.
Mm-hmm.
There's metal roofs all over the historic district, and this to me, I don't understand the recommendation because it's, I understand what you're saying in terms of the rules, but this is obviously not what it was original.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're talking about preservation. We want a lifetime roof, so I don't understand this. I would, if any of the board has any input, I would like to hear it.
Can I say something? Wasn't that location, remember back when Jimmy Jungle used to be there, that was a food store?
Yes.
Sorry,
Y'all don't remember that?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes, right? And,
Yes.
I don't remember if it had a tin roof, but more than likely it probably did. There should be some pictures on that somewhere, I would think.
As I said, the evidence that we were able to retrieve was as early as 1985, the shingles were there.
Yeah, exactly, but 1985 was yesterday, it's no big deal.
35 years.
Somebody needs to investigate, you know, and find pictures or previous owners, the real great ones who owned that store.
Would it satisfy the recommendation a little bit more to help come to some sort of compromise with finding a lifetime material, but that looks a little bit more than like what's there right now, like changing the color, going from a red roof to a metallic silver? It, you know, will change what we are used to seeing for the last 35 years.
I mean, the board is within its discretion to approve or deny the proposed amendments. The staff recommendation is simply based on the guidelines and standards of the Secretary of the Interior.
Mm-hmm.
We did speak with the Texas Historical Commission, who also identified that the replacement of existing materials, especially shingles, by corrugated metal roofs, was typically not recommended. They mentioned that, you know, even materials that have been there quite some time achieve historical significance on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did look at the standards and guidelines quite closely in this case and based our recommendation on those guidelines.
There's a photo as an example where it says Lone Star Steel and Supply, and then it has that metal roof. Where is that from? Is that also attached to the building? on page,
No, those are examples of the roofing
There's
materials.
samples of,
but the picture, the photos that's there, is that just a random photo or is that in the
Those were
area?
photos provided by the applicant.
Okay.
Would it be a lot more expensive to do something that is roofable, follows the interior guidelines?
I would defer to the applicant. I'm sure they have investigated the alternatives.
Is the applicant here?
He's not here, but I do work for him. My name is Veronica Sierra. I work for Mr. Sierra, which is a contractor. I don't know exactly if he's looked into that as far as if there's something more expensive. I do know that the owner wants to go with metal material to, again, preserve the building and at the same time make it more durable. So that's pretty much what he's asking for.
Well,
I do believe that metal is more expensive.
it is
than-
more expensive. I was
than
about
the
to say that
shingle.
he's
And
trying
so
to
they're
add to
trying
this
to
building.
improve,
He's trying to
right?
improve this building. Going from shingle to roof is like going from, from the lowest possible standard to the highest possible standard.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going from a 20-year shingle roof, which is really cheap, to the most expensive you can possibly try.
100 years.
A 100-year roof,
It's
and
usually about 2 or 3 times more expensive to have aluminum.
and not only that, they show that there's a rustic red. The Lone Star Steels, right here, they show they have a red color in the roofing. Now, it's not really red. It's just a standard shingle roof, guys. You can get this this is not historic. Like the roof that's on there is not historic.
Right.
You can buy it at Lowe's.
And for
I
the,
think that we need, though, to look at evidence. And what staff has done is try to do research, and as far back as they could go was 1985. Now, the gentleman's correct, there was a grocery store in the front part of that property, supermarket. But I don't think that's the building that we're talking about. That supermarket part was demolished, and so I don't believe that may have had a metal roof, but I don't think the house did. This is the part that was the actual home. And I think there may be some photographic
Yes.
evidence in the Heritage Foundation files that could confirm whether there was any historical evidence of a metal roof. We all know historic Laredo homes, Victorian homes are covered with metal roofs for many, many years, so it's not completely out of character. But if there was some evidence, then I think it would be easier for us to support this petition. So perhaps we could ask, is there any hurry, rush? Are you concerned about rain damaging the structure if it's not repaired immediately? Is there some concern about that?
Not that I know of. Again, I will need to go back to my brother. I don't have the answer to that for you today.
May I volunteer something? I've seen a lot of what they call phase 1 studies when they were looking for contaminated soils and stuff like that. And there's websites that are available throughout various parts of Texas that go, they go back as far as they can go. Is that available? Has the owner, do they have any evidence showing that there was at one time a metal roof on this? Have they gone any further than just this request? Because there are sites out there that do that. I'm not trying to postpone this at all, but it would add legitimacy to what you want to do. It would make it almost a slam dunk.
There are Sanborn fire insurance maps that may cover this neighborhood, and the map itself has like an index or a
Marking.
key that shows materials, because it was meant to insure buildings for fire purposes. So there may be some research that we can help with as a volunteer. We could help the owners if they would like to perhaps withdraw their request and give it a little bit more time for research. Otherwise, all that we have is what staff is recommending and the current research available to 1985. And using that, we would probably have to support staff's recommendation without more knowledge. So what would the applicant like to do at this point?
I guess we'll go back to the owner and try to see if we can gather that data, because I know that he does want to go with the
metal
with
roof.
what, the metal, basically.
Is there an opportunity maybe for our board to say, to give, staff an opportunity where we make a motion and say, if there is evidence of a metal roof, go ahead and move forward. If there's not, then it needs to be the recommendation that board, that the staff recommended. Can we make that motion?
Yes.
That way we can speed the process up for the applicant.
I think that's an excellent idea. I would like to
I would like to
entertain a
make the,
motion.
yeah, I would like to make the motion that, if we can find evidence that there was a metal roof there, to give them approval to move forward with their plan. If there's not, supported evidence of that, then we go with the staff recommendation on this project.
Okay, just to be clear, it would be a motion to approve the applicant's proposed improvements, conditional to applicant submitting evidence of a metal roof previously existing at that location. Is that correct?
I think that's.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you for cleaning that
No
up. for me.
problem.
However,
So-
if they want to,
I
if they are,
I would like to make a comment. Just, so you know, there is a metal shingle roof. There are shingles, they do make shingles that are made out of metal. But I think they are more expensive. And that
Yes.
is a more expensive option than just a standard standing seam roof. If I'm not mistaken, Ms. Spoorer, you might know a little bit better.
Correct.
But yeah, I was just trying to look it up real quick. In the meantime, I don't want to make them spend more money either. So I think if we can find evidence, I think that'd be the best thing.
my question now is, if there is no evidence of a metal roof, how can they move forward with a shingle? Do they have to come back?
I think so.
Or can we
They
also
can appeal,
include that in
they
the
can appeal the
conditional
decision
approval?
of, if it does turn out that they cannot provide any evidence, then it would be, it would have failed, it would have been denied, their motion, for your motion, if that's the vote.
Would you,
And then they can appeal to council.
would we consider refining that motion a little bit to say, subject to finding supporting evidence, you're automatically approved. If not, I don't want to automatically deny you. This board may vote to have them by itself, may recommend at the next meeting, if they can't find supporting evidence. I mean, I'm not going to inherently deny them, but we'll bring it back here. But we don't want to force that vote right now if we can get a slam dunk with some historical evidence. So a little bit of a modification, if you're willing to your motion, to automatically approve if they find supporting evidence. But if not, it will be their choice to either withdraw and or bring it back at the next available meeting for a straight up vote from this board, whether we recommend the shingles or not. It's not inherently.
The motion
it would
of
be
the board
modifying
is
it.
completely
Yes, I
to-
agree
in your
with
discretion.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
that's change in motion. I do agree with that change in motion.
All right,
So that is the motion, that's the motion, I'll second it.
Yes, that is
Okay.
the motion.
all right.
I mean, you guys could also approve the metal roof, even if you don't find evidence, if there's enough votes.
That's what we're saying. That's what I'm saying. If they don't find evidence, we're gonna come back and take the vote.
Yeah, take a vote, yeah.
Yes, yeah, we're leaving that door open.
That's what we just said.
Yeah.
I have a question, Ms. Guevara. Was there permits pulled in the 80s when they put these shingles on?
We did not do that research.
So could we look into that? Would
We
that
could-
show what was there prior?
Okay.
Well, if, we don't know that the shingles were pulled in the 80s. That's when the evidence was that we found pictorial evidence of shingles on the roof. They could have been pulled years before then. We did a little bit of research of when shingles were developed, and it was between 1903 to 1911 that they were developed and became popular.
Right.
So they could have easily been before then.
And so if someone put on a roof like that without getting authorization from the city, then we have to stick with that, even though they did it without authorization?
The historic guidelines focus very clearly on preservation. Those are the materials that exist currently, and therefore the recommendations are always to avoid the changing of those materials, to preserve existing materials, finishes, textures, designs. So it's not necessarily based on whether you know, it was a legal permit or those sorts of things.
It's just what's there now.
It's the preservation of,
I don't think there were permits back in the, I mean, there wasn't a board like you guys have right now, to approve or not approve. I mean, there was all.
if you'd care to step to the lectern to speak, it's
Well, no,
difficult to have
Yeah.
have it.
I'm just saying,
If you could step to the lectern so that they could capture,
just that.
if they could capture your comments for the record.
Identify yourself, sir. Give us your name.
My name's David Juarez. I live here in the neighborhood. I've been there since '60s, and I forgot what I was going to say. But I was just saying that back then there were no rules. There was a beautiful historical house in front of my house back in the '70s, more or less, and somebody, I don't know who, came in and demolished the beautiful house right in front of my house. I mean, so there weren't any rules. They knocked down the church also. What is it, on Victoria and Davis? I mean,
So it was
a lot of-
porch was 10.
there weren't any rules, so you can't rely on the existing materials that you have right now to make a decision.
Yeah,
That's all I'm
because if we
saying.
can find that, it can be restored. It's not just about preservation, it's also restoration also. So if there was a material there now, but wasn't there when the building was originally, you know, built, and you want to restore it back, I mean, that's something that.
There's possibly a solution there that they might also agree to using a lifetime material, but that kind of looks a little bit more. Because on the east, I did drive around on the east side of the building, it is very visible. It would create a change and, you know, but yeah, we definitely want to work with them and find a common ground here.
It's very likely that the original material was wood shingle, and that's not allowed any longer for fire purposes. But there are other options, like there are asphalt shingles that look like wood shingles that could be considered by the owner. So maybe the research will help you come up with a better option. So we have a motion and a second, and I'd like to call the question.
I support.
All in favor?
Uh,
Anyone opposed? All right. So does the applicant understand what we have approved?
Just a quick question, as far as the time that we need to provide the owner to be able to try to find the evidence, is there a particular timeline or?
They haven't established any deadline.
Do you have a pencil?
I do.
Let me see if I can get in there. Maybe you can find it. I'm looking at a website right now, historicaerials.com, and it allowed me to go back to 1964. It's black and white. I'm looking at the address right now, and that may or may not help. I don't know. Just quick search. I've seen multiple reports where they actually do this. So there may be others.
Can you repeat that website again, please?
It's historicaerials.com, HISTORICAERILS.com.
Thank you.
And I just entered the address, and it's black and white, obviously a little grainy, but I mean, if you can see the sun reflecting in it,
Then you
Yeah.
know.
a little happy face on it.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I be excused? Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Should I see that after? That thing would have been more clearly.
Bye.
Next item is
Like I said,
discussion with possible action on the following. Ordinance 2021-0-091 as approved by the City Council on May 17th, 2021 on second reading, which clarifies that not all activity of a property owner requires historic board review. Only activity which requires a building permit and is not considered repair or maintenance requires historic board review. This is on the agenda at our request from last meeting because I believe some of us are concerned that it needs further clarification. And so it's on the agenda so that we can discuss it as a board because I think it kind of moved through very quickly, and
We have a short presentation,
Very
Madam
good.
Chairman, if you
Thank you.
indulge us.
yes, please.
We heard staff's, pardon me, the commission's request for clarification on the ordinance in order to, I guess, discuss it and understand the process. So we thought we would go back and give the commission a bit of background on how ordinance amendments are processed and initiation, and the different roles and responsibilities of the different entities involved in that process. So the initiation of ordinance amendments or initiation of amendments to the Laredo, Land Development Code. The code identifies who may initiate those ordinance amendments, and they may be initiated by staff. They may be initiated by adoption of a motion of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and or by adoption of a motion of City Council. So those are the three ways that ordinance amendments are initiated. This was a slide seeking to identify the different roles and responsibilities of the different commissions involved. The Historic Commission, and I wish I had it here because I'm having trouble reading it up there. The section that the Land Development Code identifies that the Historic Commission shall make recommendations to the Planning and Zoning Commission, to the City Manager, to City Council, concerning the adoption of policies, the sources of funds, and the designation of districts and landmarks that may further the city's preservation efforts. However, the Historic Commission does not consider the proposed use, interior arrangements, interior design of any structure under their purview. So we have a differentiation of responsibilities. The Planning and Zoning Commission, rather, it is their responsibility to recommend to council on zoning plans. So there's a bit of difference there. So the purpose of the ordinance amendment was to clarify the activities which require historic board review. There was a lot of question. There was a lot of questioning. What does this account? Does this require board review? Does this not? So that was the intention behind the ordinance amendment. Also, the purpose was also to allow the historic board to authorize staff to administratively approve items which do require a historic board review, but which the commission feels comfortable in giving staff that authority to administratively approve those items. And those items have not been identified yet. Prior to the recent amendment, the code identified no permit shall be issued. It talks about, for the alteration, construction, demolition of any structure. It goes on to, again, identify that no permit shall be issued for the installation of signs. So the code focused on when permits could be issued, and it only spoke to permitted activity. But again, the interpretation had previously been that it included all activity, not simply just permitted activity, right? So again, why was there the ordinance amendment seeking clarity? So what the ordinance amendment did was to add this following language to the code. It identified that the following activities are exempt from Historic District Landmark Board review, and it listed those activities: the proposed use, interior arrangement, and interior design of any structure, repairs and renovations to existing buildings that do not alter the exterior appearance, the activities which do not require a building permit, and the addition, repair, renovation of utilities and services such as power, water, sewer, communications. So if you wanted to get, cable, at your location, previous interpretations would require coming to the board. So we wanted to clarify that you could get your plumbing fixed without having to first come to the board, right? If you have a break in your line and, things like that. And then also the language dealing with authorizing staff to administratively approve. And once again, that has not been identified. It simply gives the board that authority. So we wanted to go ahead and make sure that we remember that the first two items, A and B, already existed in the code, already listed, those were not new, that is not new language to the code. It is simply listed here to have all the exemptions listed in one place for ease of use by the public and by staff, right? So that we all know where to look when, we are trying to find out, does this require review or not, right? The items in the red box, that is new language. The activities which do not require a building permit and the items, the renovation or repair of utilities, that is new language, and the administrative approval, that is new language. So what examples, what constitutes permitted activity or non-permitted activity? We just wanted to give some examples of where permits are required. So structural work, site obscuring fences, electrical fixtures, roofing work, and you can see all down the line, unpermitted or things that do not require a permit, landscaping, short fences, see-through fences, non-electrical fixtures like mailboxes, dog houses, things like that, doors, and painting do not require a permit. So we wanted to give you the background, and now this I'm gonna have trouble saying. The background, just to bring everybody up to date on the history of how the ordinance proceeded through the process. On April 8th, 2021, the Historic Landmark Board, we had a meeting and staff presented the proposed ordinance. In a 7-0 vote, the board recommended approval of the proposed ordinance. And with the exception, they recommended approval of the proposed ordinance with the exception of doors, painting, and fences. So that was a recommended exception to the ordinance. So at the Planning and Zoning Commission, staff presented April 15th, staff presented the proposed ordinance as well as the recommendation of the Historic Board. In a 5-0 vote, the commission recommended approval of the proposed ordinance without changes. At the May 3rd City Council meeting, the introductory reading of the ordinance, staff again presented the proposed ordinance and presented both staff's recommendation, the Historic Board's recommendation, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. In an 8-0 vote, council voted to approve the introduction of the ordinance. And then on May 17th, a final reading, they voted final approval of the ordinance. Without changes, pardon me, that's important. We just wanted to go ahead and highlight, we included a copy of the staff report that was presented to council, and you can see the language there. The Historic Board recommendation that was listed for the council, as well as the Planning and Zoning's recommendation, both of those were highlighted in the staff report. And the minutes indicate that at the May 3rd meeting, there was approximately 14 people that came before the council to express their support for the proposed ordinance. And the vote, you see there, an 8-0 vote, they voted unanimously to recommend or introduce that ordinance. And then on the May 17th vote, you have the vote there, 7-0 vote to recommend or to approve, give final approval of the ordinance without changes. I think that's it.
I have questions.
Absolutely.
As I recall, we did leave some stuff unfinished with this ordinance. We left you with the authority to do administrative approvals, but we didn't identify what those are going to be yet. Those are not codified.
That remains to be addressed.
Okay, so you have authority to do it, but you don't have a guideline on what.
But the ordinance gave the commission the authority to grant staff that approval. So We don't have it yet.
So it's not really, you really can't use it yet. It's
Absolutely.
a step in the
That's
right
right.
direction, but we're not done here yet.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, sir.
All right, well, I guess what the next step would be, and, at your convenience, is what does staff recommend are the items that should be, that we need to look at that can be administratively approved, and maybe even those that in your opinion should always come in front of this board, so that we can finish this out correctly, because it's just kind of like a half repair. We're not done yet.
I think before we even get to that, we need to, because if you all recall this meeting, we came to a compromise between what Mr. Snyderman wanted and what the majority, I believe we voted a majority vote on doors, windows, and fencing at the end, because if you look at the ordinance, one of those line items, I think, makes this change extremely vague, and will only cause more confusion and will allow opportunities for the board to be not necessarily consistent within their decision making. So the one that I'm talking about is repairs and renovations to existing building which do not alter exterior appearance. Ms. Priscilla over there had mentioned that she had contacted the THC and that they recommended that we specify things like paint. And she brought up good reasons why that was. She could talk about that in a little bit. But it's important to say, well, do you think that painting a home, whether we agree with it or not, if it doesn't, the ordinance, the way that it was written before, which was an ordinance that had been worked on for many boards, many years. And now I know that we had Mr. Snyderman want to make these recommendations because he had a vision for the Historic Landmark Board, whatever that may be, whether we agreed with it or not, but he's no longer here anymore. So we don't know what that vision will be in the future. We have a new planning director coming in and a brand new ordinance that has now been changed from what was there before. It was concrete. And we have this line in there that says repairs and renovations to existing buildings which do not alter the exterior appearance. What I might think alters the exterior appearance, Mr. Gonzalez, over there might not agree to that also. So, there is a conflict there. He might say, well, I don't think painting my house is a change to the exterior. I would disagree, and vice versa. So the reason why we came to that compromise was to clarify the things that should still come before this board. What was presented was our recommendation. Yes, it was there, but if you watch the meeting, staff pushed for that explanation to be taken out, which is what happened. So basically we met and we discussed, we provided a recommendation, and although they say, yeah, they considered it, what we are going to be reviewing, we really had no say-so in how this ordinance was written and passed. And we are being put in a very strange position where I think that clarity is now extremely vague, and the whole purpose of rewriting the ordinance, yes, we need to make it easier for the applicant. We need to change the guidelines to be easier to understand and easier to process. I think this just made it worse. That is my personal opinion. I think it's a step back, and I think if this is the way the ordinance is going to be presented, it's going to open up a can of worms. And I think that it was rammed through along with a lot of other ordinances. If you look at the paper, it's just pages of ordinances being passed through. But, Mr. Snyderman is no longer here. We don't know what the new director is going to want. And, I just think that this change just, it's unfortunate that it didn't take the consideration of what this board is going to have to deal with in the future.
Well, I think the clarity was given. It was very unclear before. Because we had things like, well, can we allow pink paint? Can we not allow pink paint? Well, my neighbor has a pink house. It was very confusing before. Mm-hmm. It wasn't at all clear. Now it's very clear. You can paint your house whatever color you want.
No, but listen to it. That does not alter the experience. That doesn't say that you can paint it whatever color you want. That does not alter the appearance. You're saying that painting a house, if it was white to pink, is not altering the appearance? I beg to differ, it is not clear. That's what I'm trying to say. There is no clear definition. There is no clear line of this is right and this is wrong. This is based on opinion. I think it changes the appearance. You do not. That is the purpose of the ordinance. It has to be written in a way that there is no way of misinterpreting it.
Well, I would think change. If you're changing the appearance, if your house is pink, Mr. Gonzalez, and you're going to paint it pink, then you're not changing the appearance. But if you decide to paint it purple, that is a change. So that qualifies that request to come before this board. But now we've added building permit as an or, right? So I'm concerned about that because, as I mentioned at that first meeting when this was brought to the board, the words building permit are not mentioned in our ordinance. The word permit is. So someone interpreted the word permit to equal building permit, and that is not true. Other cities, as Ms. Guerra can probably tell you, New Orleans has certificate of appropriateness, and you go to a building in a historic area that is being improved, and it'll have some paper this big that the public can read telling you that whatever work they're doing in that building has been certified to have been appropriate. That work was certified to be appropriate.
Absolutely.
Well, we don't have that language here. Whoever wrote this just wrote permit. So in other words, someone coming to our board asking to change the roof is going to receive our permission to make that change. So that is what it means by permit, not building permit, which is a city building department function, not a historic district landmark board function. And so when we pursued this change to add building permit to our language, I think was incorrect, inappropriate, and it only confused the public more. I don't know how anyone in the community can find out what requires a building permit. If you go and you study the city website, you don't get a clear definition. People are going to interpret on their own whatever they think requires a building permit or not, and that's how they're going to make the decision whether they come to the planning staff to make an application. They're going to interpret on their own whether they need a building permit, whatever that means.
This is also something that I spoke to about with Mr. Kirby when he was thinking of all of this. My background, I'm with Main Street. Number one thing that we talk about is preservation and restoration of any historic building. That's what we do. But we also think about economic development and how incentivizing development and restoration so people can actually use the buildings instead of them, not being used. So that's just so you guys can have a background on my comments. When I was talking to Kirby about this, I said I agreed with the route that he took. I also agreed with the position the board took as far as saying except for painting, doors, and there was another one on there. I can't remember what it was. Fences. Okay, so I came to the agreement on that as well because I can understand the vision behind that. However, what I did propose to Kirby was saying we also, as a commission, as a department, as a city, need to provide resources to whoever's in a historic district. So, for instance, Main Street is a resource for anybody in the downtown area. There's other historic districts in other areas, but if the department or if Main Street, whatever, could be partner with this commission in any way to give resources. So one of the resources that we do is design assistance. And what we'll do is we'll go out to the property, we'll take photos, we'll send it over to Austin, which is the headquarters for the Texas Main Street program, and then they'll do research and everything on what is appropriate for that building. So how I see historic buildings is anybody that's willing to invest in that property in the first place wants to do it because they want to do it for the right purposes. They know that it's a beautiful building. They want to do, they want to make sure that it comes back to life for the majority times, right? And I'm not going to say every single time, but for the majority, that's what you see when people buy properties in historic districts. I do think that there's another component there that we're missing, is that resource where when somebody as a property owner goes, hey, I'm in the downtown or I'm in the historic district, what resources do I have so that if I want to paint my house, where can I go, you know? And I think that's a component that we're missing, because I think we're relying too much on this commission to make those approvals, when there could be a resource there before.
Yes, you're talking about public education,
Mhm.
an important component, which has been discussed on this board for many years. And there's opportunities to apply for grants, for workshops. We could invite the Texas Historical Commission to come and do workshops on how to improve your windows without having to tear them out, your doors, your paint colors, etc., your roof. But we need to promote that. We need to build that in. And, you know, when we're talking about requiring, we're telling people about, oh, if you don't need a building permit, then you can do this work. How are we educating people about
And that's
that?
what I mean, is that at that moment when they go to the city to say, hey, I want to do this to my property, do I need approval? No, you don't, but here are some resources so that you can make a good decision, an informed decision. And that's what's missing.
And even
there.
with the way we I think, made our recommendation to include the terminology paint, doors, windows, fencing, we also added in, well, I made the motion to add in the authority to give administrative approval to staff, so that we can say, okay, well, let them paint without coming if it's within a certain range of color. You know, they can paint, we can create a palette and say, okay, here's 100 colors that you can choose from, all the way from pink to blue to whatever. You make the decision, we won't say anything. Or for this district, we built it into our recommendation to be able to give staff more authority, but for us to still have some sort of, because we are appointed with this responsibility. So there is a purpose for us, and it's important that we stay, you know, we are a CLG community, and we do have to abide by certain standards, not because we want to or because we have to. So we did, I did include it in my motion. Okay, it's like a master plan. Let's strategically plan how we're going to do public education, public outreach, incorporating the new ordinance, rewriting the guidelines, and giving staff the authority to let some of these applications go through without coming to us, in a way that we can still say, okay, this is still falling in line with the standard. Making sure that it falls in line with the standard is our responsibility.
And I think that the ordinance, the way it was written previously, which states repairs and renovations to existing buildings which do not alter the exterior appearance, already includes everything that we stand for. If you're going to alter the exterior appearance in any way, then that request should come to this board or to staff, if we have so designated that or delegated that authority to staff. And so adding the words not requiring a building permit just adds more confusion to it. Well, what does require a building permit? And that was not necessary.
And you see, to me, when I hear that, it provides me with more guidance, because now I know that I can go to the city and ask what is required for a building permit, and they'll give me a list. And then from there, I can do whatever's not on that list. That's on my opinion. That's
If
how
our windows in building permits, if you're going to replace your window, do you need a building permit?
In the presentation, you had a slide there that had.
You can put up the presentation again, sir?
The building department's website has a list of their, what requires a permit applications and requirements.
Windows aren't listed.
Or windows. So you do
need a permit.
You need a permit to change the windows. Okay.
And we were presented
But we
this
said
list at the
doors and
last.
painting.
Yeah, and then that's where, as a board, we all said, okay, painting and doors, and even the fencing would be, because technically, the way that I would read it before, without the verbiage that there is now, is like even landscaping. I mean, that was also a huge thing. Like as a property owner, if every time I want to do some type of change to my landscape, I mean, that's also
Right.
have to wait a month to come, and then I don't know. I don't see that feasible. I don't see that as an incentive for people to want to come into the district and take care of the properties.
Which is the purpose for saying paint, doors, and fence. Everything else was, what fell under that non-permitted activity. So yeah, I think the fact that was taken out, okay, so now that means anything. And I've made this comment before. I know that when we speak, I know that we have several people here that have investment in the St. Peter's district, but there are other districts that we need to be thinking about. The Old Mercado, the San Agustin, El Azteca, National Register district to some extent with demolitions and stuff. So when we think about some of these things, we have to think about all of the different districts, which we also have proposed having several different guidelines for different districts. And it's just something that we have to talk about. But the whole point was that when this ordinance was brought to us, it was brought on very quickly without other factors that needed to be considered. We changed an ordinance with nothing there to support it, with educational materials. It just changed it. It made it more vague and told everybody, go do whatever you want to do, but we have a responsibility. So I think that the way this passed without our recommendation, I did watch the meeting and our recommendation was read. But as far as at least giving us some credibility for it, it wasn't there. And again, being the person appointed responsible for carrying out what the preservation plan entails me to carry out, I would have liked our recommendation to be included in that.
The way this stands, our family owns a 1909 building in the St. Peter's district. If we were to remove the beautiful 1909 door and put in a metal aluminum door, we could do that. And we would be destroying the facade of that historic building, the architectural integrity of that building. That should not be allowed just because we don't have to get a building permit to change our front door.
No. So we're arguing about an ordinance that has already passed though?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, well, I mean,
But it
then
can
we
still
make a
be
motion
amended.
to amend it then. I mean, but it sounds like some people are upset.
I mean, we're talking
We're not
about
gonna go
safety
anywhere.
here also. So you expect the family living there to say, well, you know what, my door's falling apart, but I need to wait a month, pay $300 and ask a board for permission to change my door.
Well, we can always give administrative approval for things that entail safety issues.
And what about a fence?
A fence, if it's
I can't afford a wrought iron fence.
right, but that would be a thing, I guess, that does have to come to the board, because if people are unanimous about, okay, well, they have some sort of safety issue, so they need a chain link fence, and I don't agree with it, but the majority of it does, then it goes forward. But if the majority of the board does not agree with it, then it does not. But
Depend on the circumstance.
it'll depend on the circumstance.
That's where it gets murky. And that's where it gets.
That's why we're here.
But see, why is it okay for somebody and not okay for somebody else? And that's why.
Not every property is the same, not every historic district is the same. That's why the color purple may be totally inappropriate for my building, but it may be appropriate for yours. It depends on where you are, what your architectural style is. Can you see it from the street? There's so many factors.
Everybody here though, I just want to say this. I mean, we're speaking of a lot of grievances that we did recommend and it just went through. They just talked about it. Whether you are against that recommendation or not, now that's one thing. But in order to do something, if we want to be, we're just, we're complaining, if we want to change it again, we can change it again. Let's tell staff to go.
Apologies to be
Go ahead,
clear.
please.
The initiation of ordinance amendments, we looked at it. They may be initiated by staff,
Okay.
by motion of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and by the City Council. So unfortunately, this body does not have the authority to initiate ordinance.
But the current approved ordinance did begin here.
No, it initiated with staff.
Well, with staff, but they ran.
It was Mr.
but-
Snyder.
Yeah, he ran it by us, did he
And
not?
decided
Correct,
that our,
and
and
the
decided
board
that our,
did give their recommendation.
And,
he decided that our recommendation was not,
didn't we vote on something that day?
yes.
What
But
did
he,
we vote? What did we vote?
No window.
He was just asking our opinion.
It was a formality, because
Okay.
I know he had told me,
I know that.
and I know I heard him say it to her also, that our recommendation, or what we thought,
Okay.
he had a different vision, and that was just not gonna
Well,
happen.
what do y'all want to do about it? I mean,
I think our only option is to ask staff if they will consider making the amendment. And I would like to ask
but-
also whether the Texas Historical Commission has approved this language, because
They were consulted prior to, and the ordinance amendments was sent to them. So, and I think it was even presented at the meeting. I'm not sure about that one. But
So-
they were consulted prior to the initiation of the ordinance.
and if,
But
And
your,
so-
Commissioner Nance is correct. The ordinance has been approved by council. The recommendations, this board did vote on it. They recommended approval with the proposed amendments. Those amendments, the recommendation of this commission, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission, were brought before the council. However, council didn't agree, and they voted to approve the ordinance without the recommended changes.
as staff recommended to them. And I'm not
And
sure
the
that
Planning and
our
Zoning Commission
recommendation
recommended.
went to P and Z, or it
Yes,
went
it
with.
did.
It did?
It did. Yes, ma'am.
So I think I guess the only thing really what we can do if the planning and zoning department won't go back up to see if they can alter that or change it, is start to provide those resources that we were talking about. Because I think that's what's gonna be the most important next step for somebody that's interested in doing any changes to their property, is providing them that
I think
space.
there's a way that we could, well, I know that individually, I think we could figure out, if it doesn't go through planning and zoning, I think, and I mean, whether you all agree, with, me or my point of view or not, I think I've been coming to these meetings now for about 20 years. And these ordinances are something that many people before us have worked on. And this one ordinance just changed a lot of work for a lot of people. And, I know that the people in the business district feel one way, and I know people in the St. Peter's district felt another way. But when they became historic districts, they endorsed it and they supported a preservation plan being brought in. And the problem was that it was just not being implemented. There was no money being implemented or budgeted for any type of historic preservation initiatives. I believe Ms. Sepulveda asked earlier, have any CLG grants been put into place so that we can put into these historic districts? And I believe the answer was no. I've asked this question now for 2 years since Kirby's been here. Have any monies been put towards historic preservation efforts as far as planning and zoning go? And he said no, and it's not gonna happen. So, yeah, when we talk about resources, I know my organization also, we have a preservation kit that we give out for all the different historic districts. It's something that the city needs to invest in, because if not, then yeah, this ordinance just pretty much undid a lot of work that many people for many years have been working towards. So I think, I don't know if, planning and zoning, hopefully the new director will meet with us, and, maybe that's the way to do it. I might have an opinion, Mr. Gonzalez might have another one, but,
It good to talk about.
It's good to talk about it because that's how you come to a compromise.
Absolutely.
And a common ground, because this just went totally another direction. I mean, you know,
And we agreed that there needed to be simplification and education, but those components need to be actively worked on. If not, this is pointless.
I agree
It
with
just
you guys
makes things
100%
worse.
that there needs to be some sort of education for this to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, what was in place wasn't working. There was no incentive. There was it was a de-incentivization to invest in the historic district at the way it was.
well, because it wasn't being implemented correctly. If you look at the preservation plan, I don't know if you were ever given a copy, there are line items in there. Webb County Heritage Foundation is in charge of doing this. The Historical Commission is in charge of doing this. City Planning Department is in charge of doing this. And every single one of those items had a money value to it.
Gotcha.
So if that is not being funded, do you think all of that programming is going to happen?
No, absolutely not.
So there is a preservation plan in place that was not being supported. That's where we need to get back to.
And if the issue is staff time or limited budget on the part of the city, then we need to know that so that then we can speak to our representatives and talk about putting some significant resources to preserving our community, because we're not doing it.
I agree 100%. I mean, you guys know, I own several homes, and I've never gotten a packet about preservation. I've never gotten reached out to by anybody. Hey, this is the proper way on how to do it. Here's some help. Let me show you. It's hard, and you know this. Your electric bill must be $1,000 in the summer because you can't keep cold air in the house. I can't, and I mean it's hard to own one of these buildings. I would love it more than anything because I would benefit from it to get these programs in place. Let's figure out a way how.
Okay. So, if we wanted to meet with our new planning director, how would we do that?
Of course, you'll have to come to the next historic meeting. But if you would not like to meet with him in his office when he assumes his role, you could reach out to him or he could reach out to you. Either way.
So individually we could do that, but we can't do it as a group because of
Quorum
quorum issues.
issues, correct.
Okay.
Come by at 5:30 in the morning on Monday. I'm here Orlando Gloves. That's a favorite meeting time. Tell them I said that.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, I have been logged out of my screen, but I'm assuming the next item is, should we conclude our discussion then with a plan of action, or it seems like we were all in agreement that something needs to change. So do we continue to bring this item on the next agenda so that we can continue the discussion with some action steps? Or do you?
I think we should bring a topic like this to every single meeting where we work towards a strategic plan for this committee, and to consider ordinances, I guess, based on what the next meeting is. Becky could say, Vanessa, this time we're going to talk about the ordinance, or this time we're going to talk about outreach. So that we can prepare ourselves, so that we can also give you all stuff to show maybe what it is that we're talking about. I don't mind doing the work as far as that goes. That's what I do on a daily basis anyways. So, I think that would be good, where we have some sort of workshop between us so that we can get to developing something that works a little bit better.
Is there a motion from the committee?
Is that your motion?
Yeah, that's my motion. Yeah. Did that make sense?
No.
Just to include,
An
what do we
item,
call it? A
an item
landmark,
on the agenda, right?
an item on the agenda to discuss different topics pertaining to strategic planning for Historic Landmark Board.
Well, I think our responsibilities include, our role says that we are involved in policy, in forming policy or recommending policy. So maybe that we have.
Okay, I move for now, now on, to always have an action item on the agenda to work on policy development for the Historic Landmark Board.
I second that.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm opposed to that.
You are?
Yes, I am.
Um,
The reason I'm opposed to that is because you can barely make quorum and then at any time, and then you're ready to do exactly what you didn't like what happened with Mr. Steinman, where then at that day, you're like, hey, let's recommend this one off. It would be better like, hey, everybody involved, we're getting ready to recommend policy. And it's on the, not just an open agenda item, just floating around, waiting for all the people that are on your side to be here, and you're like, all right, today's the day. And then you knock something out, and that can go either way on what you want. I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna talk about policy, let's make a specific agenda, not just an open-ended, every single meeting, we're ready to strike kind of thing.
I see your point, and
Yeah.
I think the whole.
But I'm just one objection.
The verbiage is action. So instead of saying an action item, would you consider an amendment? That a discussion, and then if there is an action item, it would be brought up at the following meeting and put on the agenda properly.
Okay, I amend my motion to replace the word action to discussion.
Well, I guess you would accept the amendment,
I accept that amendment.
So then, should we vote again on the amended motion? All in favor of the amended motion?
Right.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So then the next item is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Very productive meeting. And thank you for your participation.